Hey everybody, welcome to Apocalypse Rising. Thanks for tuning in. Got a little break here at work. It's been super busy today, so I worked all the way through since this morning. Just grabbed something quick to eat. Breakfast! Decided I'd make a video on a Friday, keep it going. And you know, it's crazy now. The algorithm is in full steam ahead on my phone. It just keeps throwing climate change articles on my phone left and right. And it's interesting to think about how technology has really just accelerated confirmation bias in a sense. It only cares if you click on things. So it wants to keep showing you things that you want to see. And that's a problem because we're losing our critical thinking skills, our ability to determine what's propaganda and what's not, because we just live in this reinforcing world of echo chambers where whatever we believe, we just keep seeing. And we don't really take the time to step back and look at all the different perspectives and really consider them, not just disregard them right away because that's not what we agree with.
21.
And that's been going on for a long time, but it seems like the internet has just amplified that. And then, of course, the lack of critical thinking skills in school and education just compounds the situation. So I'll try to keep this one quick. I'm going to do what I did last time. I'm just going to grab an article that I sent myself. I haven't read it. I'm going to react to it as I go along. And this one really caught my eye. It's by futurehuman.medium.com, and it's titled, "Just Stopping Emissions May No Longer Be Enough to Stop Global Warming." Now, this was published, it looks like a day ago, and this is what we've been talking about. So like I said in the past, I'm not an expert, but it really seems like just observing what's going on and understanding a little bit what's happened in the past, especially geologically, it's pretty obvious to me what's going on with the evidence and what is occurring with melting ice, melting permafrost, the soil releasing, carbon emissions, the population growth, agriculture, everything that's going on right now is really leading towards a climate shift where we have to start removing things from the atmosphere. We have to start removing this carbon buildup, or we're never going to cool the planet off. So let's see what this article has to say. Researchers argue that it's time to invest in aggressive carbon capture. Okay, so exactly what we've been talking about. Earlier this year, the Earth saw a huge dip in carbon emissions as nations around the globe locked down due to the spread of the coronavirus. It offered a glimpse into what the world might look like if we took drastic steps to reduce our carbon emissions to slow the spread of global warming. For a brief moment, smog-choked cities around the world had clear skies. Okay, this is actually kind of funny to me because, first of all, because there wasn't as much smog, actually more sunlight got in and directly impacted ice that way instead of having it like reflected from the smog. And also think about what's happened to the global economy since we had to lock down for the coronavirus. It hasn't been good. And clearly it hasn't really done anything to slow carbon emissions because this year is still super hot. And it's my personal opinion that it's like, just like with coronavirus, you have cases that go up and it's just cases that go up. Deaths kind of stay the same. And then all of a sudden, lagging behind cases, up come the deaths. Well, that's where we're at with carbon emissions. There's so many emissions in the atmosphere right now that the effects of the heating planet are at its infancy, really, and it will soon hit an exponential growth as well. Obviously, this is just me as a normal person with my opinion, but I feel like it's going to follow that same pattern where even if we stop doing what we're doing, all the carbon that's already in the atmosphere is going to continue heating the planet, not to mention all the carbon and methane and everything else that's going into the atmosphere as we speak because of positive feedback loops. But according to a new modeling study published in Scientific Reports today, even if we made such drastic reductions permanent, not only would our economies collapse,
Damn, Daniel,
it would still not be enough. The study suggests that if we stopped all human-made greenhouse gas emissions immediately, the Earth's temperature would continue to rise because of self-sustaining melting ice and permafrost. These feedback loops, finally they're talking about this stuff. And it's crazy because, like I said, I'm not an expert, but this is sounding exactly like what we've been talking about. These feedback loops in which melting ice causes less sunlight to be reflected back into space, which in turn raises temperature and causes more ice melt, have already been set into motion, the researchers argue. Okay, so we all know what positive feedback loops are, but here's something new. Researchers say it's already been set into motion. Not that, oh, the tipping point is in the future or we still have this time to reverse what we've done. No, we've already put the positive feedback loops into motion. Humanity is beyond the point of no return when it comes to halt the melting of the permafrost using greenhouse gas cuts as the single tool. This is not rocket science.
breakfast.
Anybody should recognize that at this point. The permafrost is melting, the ice is melting, it's coming out of the soil. That's not even talking about the forests that are burning and just releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and clearly they're not reabsorbing it either. That's not to say we should give up on reducing emissions. Absolutely not. We have to do that. Don't even look at reducing emissions as trying to save the planet from climate change.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Because that's not what's going to save it from that. But rather look at it that we're just taking all these resources. We're basically raping the planet of all its resources while we're blazing down this path. Randers says that the world should accelerate its efforts to cut greenhouse gas emissions in order to postpone as much as possible the temperature rise. So this is very vague and not specific. Postpone it by how much? And start developing the technologies for large-scale removal of greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. Okay, so now we have a scientist backing up what we've been saying for the past few weeks here. For decades, climate scientists have tried to predict the so-called tipping point. Oh, here we go with that word again, predict, at which it would be too late to stop global warming, too late to limit the amount the temperature rises, the amount of sea level rise, and the number of lives claimed by both and other climate-induced ecological disasters through reducing carbon emissions alone. And that's just not going to cut it. Climate scientists point to either 2030 or 2050 as deadlines for the world to get to zero emissions before runaway climate change kicks in. Hold on a second. This is the first time I've seen 2030. I've been saying 2030 now, and I think people feel like I'm exaggerating. But here's a scientist saying that it's possible that if we don't get to zero emissions by 2030, we're going to have basically runaway climate change. There's no way we're going to get to zero emissions by 2030. All the articles that we've been looking at, all the research we've been doing puts this stuff out to 2030 before it even becomes viable.
He needs some milk.
Let alone reducing enough of what we've already done to keep us from this runaway climate change. But according to the new study, no matter how much we reduce emissions now, warming will continue, and the self-sustained melting of Arctic ice and permafrost that has already begun could continue for 500 years. I don't even know why they throw around numbers like 500 years. We're not going to be here in 500 years.
You're so dumb.
2050, what is that? It's going to be a wasteland. It simply will not stop from cutting man-made greenhouse gases. We need to do something more in order to stop it. Well, yeah, we need to suck it out of the air somehow. Oh, and here we go. It says, an associate professor at business school in Switzerland make the case that it's time to pursue more aggressive climate strategies like carbon sequestration. So even though that was a foul ball,
These nuts.
it's looking like it's our best option at this point, at least to get us to 2030. Then we can start seeing if fusion comes through. They modeled the impact of greenhouse gas emission reductions on the global climate from 1850 to 2500. So this stuff, you lose me because it's just a bunch of numbers. It's just a bunch of, I guess, variables and statistics. It doesn't mean anything. I just look around at what's going on and go from there. Recent research on global temperature rise due to the climate change predicts that Earth's temperature will rise between 2.6 and 3.9 degrees Celsius over the next few hundred years. I mean, this is a joke. This is going to happen in the next 20 years. Easy. NOAA scientists project in 2017 that the sea level rise will be between 12 inches and 8.2 feet by 2100. I mean, who cares about 2100? No one's going to see that.
Allahu Akbar!
To stop this projected rise, we would have had to reduce our emissions to zero between 1960 and 1970. Well, here we go. 1970. That's about 50 years ago. That's when I said that we needed to already have done this to prevent what we're about to face. Randers says it's urgent that larger organizations like NASA and NOAA check that their climate change models address the self-sustained melting. See, they don't. And that's the problem, because if they did, these numbers would be way different, guaranteed. Self-sustained melting is caused by three things. There's melting ice, then the sun has less to be reflected off of, and it heats the planet more. I mean, we already know about that. To stop self-sustained ice melting and the expected rise in temperature and sea level rise after emissions cease, Randers says the world must undertake a massive effort to capture carbon out of the atmosphere and store it back underground, a technology known as carbon sequestration. So what we've been talking about. And we would have to start sucking at least 33 gigatons out of the air every year starting this year. Whoa, what's this? 33 gigatons? I'm pretty sure that article that we read the other day said that they might be able to do 500 million tons by 2100. What's 33 gigatons? So far right now, we're removing 1 million tons per year, and that's this year. And starting this year, we would have to remove 33 gigatons. The technology isn't there, folks. That's the problem. For comparison, all animal life on Earth collectively weighs in an estimated 2 gigatons. Wow, that's a huge number. There are already lots of carbon capture and storage projects of varying sizes underway all over the world. We already read about a few of those, but none of them attempts to tackle carbon capture on the scale that Randers recommends. Not even close. He says we will need tens of thousands of huge plants to capture and store the carbon for at least 100 years. And how much energy is it going to take to build tens of thousands of huge plants? Out of 33 gigatons, how much more is going to go in just from this? It's a very big job, but it's equivalent to the work involved in putting all man-made CO2 into the atmosphere, which has taken us 100 to 200 years of industrial activity. To think we're going to reduce that in 10 years with the technology that we have now, it's a stretch, in my opinion. And they use words like it's a very big job, it's challenging, uncertainty, predictions. I mean, we still don't know exactly how this is going to unfold. But the more we dig into this, the more it seems like this is a lot more dire than what we think, than what we've been led to believe. And yeah, I'm a fearmonger, but
the Bible. This is the Bible.
You question the words of the mighty!
I just feel like this is happening, and it's going to be too late once we all agree, and it's already too late, in my opinion. So I think that's enough doom and gloom for today. I probably got to get back to work here, but I just kind of want to make a video and talk a little bit about the climate. And, with the elections that are going on, if Donald Trump somehow manages to win, he doesn't care about climate change. There's no way we're going to be net zero by 2030 if he's the president. And Joe Biden, he wants to do the green initiative, but the amount of money and the amount of carbon it's going to take to create that, I think it's still going to be too late. And a lot of times I think it might even just be pandering to the green movement. It's not enough. I don't think we're capable of doing what it's going to take is the problem. And now I'm not the only one saying that. We've got scientists. We're looking at some of the solutions that could potentially help us avert our demise, and it's not really looking good. So I hope everybody has a good weekend. And I know this is like Debbie Downer stuff, but uh, I try not to take it too seriously, because what can you really do? I just do this to bring it to people's attention, and you can take it how you will. I got to go back to normal life and contribute to it just like everybody else does. So it's kind of one of those catch 22s where we're stuck. And that's why I feel like it's just going to accelerate to the point where there's nothing we can do anything about it. And on that note, we'll talk to you next time.